So what actually got you started in cryptocurrency? Like, in the beginning, what gravitated you towards these?
So in the beginning, it was like 2012 or something like that, and my friend told me about cryptocurrency. Well, he told me about Bitcoin, and when he told me about Bitcoin, as anybody would respond to that, I was very skeptical. He kept telling me about it for a while, and I kept replying, pogs and slammers. Well, it was when people started first finding out about Bitcoin. I was like, yeah, that's just another fad. It'll die off soon. That was my response. And then, so obviously I was in the military, and at the time I was working with the MAs, standing these 8-hour watches, and I had already been into
investing and all that kind of stuff.
Into investing, and I was following trends with the gold and silver.
Yeah, I was following those.
I was following trends for gold and silver, and there were a lot of preppers at the time, just preparing for different things. The Prepper TV show was a thing.
Yeah.
And there were preppers. Yeah, there were preppers even for the dollar collapse, right? So I'm standing on watch for this 8-hour watch, and then I just started thinking, like, well, gee, the dollar could collapse because there was a hyperinflation of some currency somewhere. I can't remember which one.
There's all over Europe.
There was a currency. It was like I can't remember. India, the $5 trillion note became useless or something like that. And I thought about how no fiat currency in history has ever survived. Ultimately, it's never survived. And then I was thinking about how eventually all fiat will eventually die, according to Grisham's law.
Yeah.
New money washes out the old money. So I started thinking about all these things, and then I kind of figured it out for myself that if the dollar were to go away, hypothetically, if the dollar were to go away tomorrow, what would people start doing? So I started thinking about this stuff for myself, just brainstorming. And then it dawned on me that if the dollar were to disappear, Bitcoin would actually be a viable method to get into, because it was technically sustainable at the time. It had never been hacked. Exchanges had been hacked, but I knew that Bitcoin itself was never really hacked, and it couldn't. People were trying to hack it, but they never could. And every time they tried to hack it, it just got stronger.
And they still can't hack it right now.
No, it was indestructible. And so that's when it dawned on me that if the dollar were to go away, Bitcoin would be a thing. And then after I realized that day, I started investing in Bitcoin.
Okay.
So that's how I got started in it. So after I made my first investment, right, I was hooked. It's kind of like you. All of a sudden you just start following it, you start tracking it, you start figuring out all these other cryptocurrencies, the altcoins, everything.
Yeah. And Litecoin, from what you see, is not looking too prosperous right now. So, it's a lot better than it was. Or what are your takes?
Cryptocurrency as a whole is shifting. So before I even knew who Charles Hoskinson was, I was I follow certain people like Jeff Berwick or Roger Ver, right? So just recent events, before I knew about Charles Hoskinson, I was following Roger Ver and his advice, which was great advice, because we had the Bitcoin debate that's been going on for years, and the Bitcoin debate is about properly scaling Bitcoin, and they can never agree on a consensus to properly scale Bitcoin. If you look at the Bitcoin, all these different Bitcoin implementation protocols, and there's so many of them. That's how we ended up with 3 different Bitcoins today, and then Segwit got canceled, Segwit 2x. It's just chaotic, and then so I'm starting to not follow Roger Ver as much, because while he is a wise financial type, he's financial savvy. That's a given.
He's still in the old money kind of.
But he understands economics and the way the market moves. I get that, and I agree with him that Bitcoin Cash is a more viable option vice Bitcoin. That's okay. That makes sense because Bitcoin Cash has nearly no transaction fee, and the agreement that they've come to is the consensus that Satoshi Nakamoto had all along, which was just increase the block sizes as necessary to be able to scale the transactions and not clog the network. So that's the case with Bitcoin Cash, and Bitcoin Cash is the only one that carries on that vision of the different types of Bitcoin. However, that's before I knew about Charles Hoskinson. Mind you, we also have some other key players, Dan Larimer and Vitalik Buterin, very wise people. But I'm not saying they have bad advice or anything like that. Those are all great people, Vitalik and Dan Larimer. And Dan Larimer is working on EOS and EOS 2.0, and Vitalik's working on Ethereum 2.0. These are all great concepts. However, Charles Hoskinson has Cardano, and Cardano is the closest to achieving that third gen type coin where it's scalable more than any other cryptocurrency. You can write smart contracts on it. You can do side chains, everything.
Yeah.
It can communicate with other coins. Right now, the leader of the cryptocurrency is Cardano.
Yeah.
And Charles Hoskinson's leading that revolution.
Even though it's still far away from the top, it's still leading the revolution as like the next generation because of its capabilities.
Yes, and the amount of people that know about this is very small. Makes sense. Like, people are just finding out about it barely, and look where Cardano's at.
Yeah, it seems like in the past 2 weeks, it's just starting to like fucking grow out of nowhere.
Yes.
Yeah. So were you following it for? When did you start following Cardano?
I found out about Cardano when it was in number 10 on the coin market cap.
Okay. When
10th
was
place.
That?
It was about 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Oh, so you just started Cardano as well,
Yes.
relatively.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Cardano's only been around for a couple months.
Okay.
Before it was trading at 10 cents, it was trading at 2 cents. It literally went from 2 cents to 10 cents.
Okay.
And there were people saying like, "Oh, I'm going to wait for it to pull back." There is no pulling back with this type of technology.
Yeah.
This technology, when people find out about it,
It's
it just takes off.
grow and
Yes.
grow and grow.
Yes. When you realize, if you don't look at the tech behind it, you're missing the whole point.
Yeah.
If you look at Cardano like you look at every other cryptocurrency, like, oh, we'll just wait for it to pull back a little bit. But if you realize the underlying tech and how it outperforms almost every other cryptocurrency, there is no waiting. You just got to get in when you get in. We're seeing today that the price appears to be retracing a little bit, correcting a little bit. What do you guys think?
I don't know. Doesn't it, like, I'm afraid to see how the actual, like, not the stock market, but like the market in general in terms of cash and how it's correlated with Bitcoin. Like, I'm interested to see like the correlation between like crashes or booms or busts in the stock market, to say, correlated with Bitcoin. Like, is it inversely proportional? Yeah, I just want to understand that. If you can understand that, it's like preparing for a collapse, which everybody seems to think is bound to happen. We just don't know when. Could happen tomorrow, could happen 5 years from now.
It's funny you should mention that. I was just reading this article. Bitcoin could be at $40,000 by the end of 2018. It easily could. There's a big wave of money coming, not just here, but all around the world. Hold on, there's another part he mentions about the traditional markets. Tai Lopez noted that if a small portion of the assets of millionaires globally invested into Bitcoin in the upcoming months, the price of Bitcoin would be justifiably $60,000.
It would skyrocket if the big guys got in. And then Warren Buffett just got in, right? Yeah. Into cryptocurrencies and all that kind of stuff.
So that's where trust comes in, when you were talking about before? Like, you get more people, basically, I guess, they trust a certain, cryptocurrency, and put into this, it increases the value of
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
In general, overall of this, like Bitcoin, for example.
Yeah, because so a lot of people will ask, "Oh, what's it backed by, right? What's Bitcoin backed by, etc." Right? And you hear that a lot, and then the sarcastic response would be, "Okay, well, what's the dollar backed by?" Right? Because the dollar's only
It's a
backed by
fiat currency as
it's
well.
only backed by trust. The only thing holding it up is definitely not linked to the gold anymore.
It's
You know?
backed by.
So it's backed by trust. People trust it, and they use it on a day-to-day basis.
Well, the government forces us to trust it, because like that's what oil is backed by right now, right? We're like the American dollar is what we use to exchange for oil all around the world. I think that's why that like gives it a little bit of value more so than just us trusting it. That's why we wage wars in Africa and all those other places to an extent, I think.
Okay. It also says analysts, including Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong, have emphasized on several occasions that approximately $10 billion in institutional money is awaiting to be invested in Bitcoin. But the daily trading volume of global Bitcoin exchange market is more than $16 billion, which is substantially higher than the amount that will be invested by institutional investors by the end of 2018. So the way I read this is like what you were saying earlier, the institutional investors, traditional markets.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money in traditional markets like stock exchanges, mutual funds. And what this article is telling me is that as that money starts to shift into cryptocurrency is just going to take off even more.
Yeah. Okay. I think what could be a problem for a lot of people is they're gonna think of money and investing into cryptocurrencies. They're gonna have an old money philosophy. Like they're gonna treat it like a stock when it's something completely different.
Right.
That's what I think might happen for a lot of people.
I agree. I don't think
Yeah.
they're the same.
It's completely different in the way, because you think of a penny stock like what kind of Cardano is, and it's just not gonna fluctuate like this the same way, because 1 out of every 1,000 penny stocks rises up. But you can tell Cardano is onto much better things.